All right, Senator, let's bring in Alaska Republican Senator Dan Sullivan, member of the Armed Services and Veterans Affairs Committee. Senator, it's good to have you. Thanks for coming into the studio.
Good to be on the show, John.
It's good to somewhat be back to normal here in terms of COVID restrictions. At any rate, you and 15 of your Senate colleagues wrote a letter to President Biden in which you really ripped him about his energy policies. You said, quote, your administration's energy policies, which focus on restricting, delaying, and killing the production of American energy, have had the predictable but catastrophic effect of driving up energy prices for American working families, increasing pink slips for American energy workers, and significantly empowering our adversaries, especially Putin, who has used energy as a weapon for decades. What is it mainly that you are seeking the president does here?
Well, first, I just want to do heartfelt condolences to the Ukrainian people right now. You know, we're seeing carnage, but we're seeing a lot of courage. And you and I were just talking about that on the set. It's quite remarkable. You know, in that letter to the president, it was before his State of the Union. And we said, look, there's some things that you need to do, Mr. President, now that we are clearly in this new era of authoritarian aggression led by Putin, led by Xi Jinping in China, and one of the most important is with regard to energy. We put forward 12 things that he could take actions on right now, but the basic point of the letter was saying we need to produce more American energy, and right now, in terms of sanctions, we need to make sure that we're not buying any more Russian energy. Right now, believe it or not, we're buying almost 700,000 barrels a day of Russian oil in America, literally subsidizing this war. And this administration is trying to shut down American energy in states like mine, the great state of Alaska. So this is a policy that makes no sense. And interestingly, you mentioned it was about 22 senators. We wrote that letter. But now there's some Democrats calling for many of the same things in terms of reorienting a course correction on the Biden administration's energy policies, particularly in light of the war in Ukraine. You
know, my colleague Sandra Smith was telling me this morning that in the last few days, apparently we have not bought any Russian oil. And this is an official government policy. This is private importers saying, either doing it out of principle,
right,
or saying we don't want to get stuck with a ship full of oil from Russia that suddenly gets seized because of sanctions. So apparently, while it's not official policy, we are reducing our imports of Russian oil. I want to ask you this question, though. With all these sanctions that we have against Russia, and the Secretary of State yesterday said that because of the devaluation of the ruble, inflation, Biden's $600 billion war chest is basically vanished. Yet he continues this push in Ukraine. You're a former military man. What will stop him?
Well, look, I think we need to continue the sanctions policy. And so far, it's worked. But going back to energy, his key strength, which is also his key weakness, is energy. And right now, we are not sanctioning the Russian energy sector, either natural gas or oil. And as you know, John, that's where he funds his war machine. Last year, the United States sent about $17 billion to Putin through the purchase of Russian oil that helps him with regard to energy. So to me,
then there's all these European nations as well who are absolutely reliant on Russian energy.
Absolutely, but you've seen some courage, right? You've seen the new chancellor of Germany say we're not going to do the Nord Stream 2 gas line. That took a lot of courage. You see the Canadian Prime Minister, they import not much at all, but they said we're not going to import Russian oil. My point has been, if you have Ukrainian grandmothers standing up to Russian tanks, I think President Biden can stand up to his far left party, part of his party that's very anti-American energy, and say, this doesn't make sense. We need to produce more American energy, and we shouldn't be importing any Russian oil right now. And I think you're going to start to see that happening.
So as Putin continues his relentless push now, apparently down in the south, Russian forces have taken over Kherson. There's an idea that they're going to push west into Odessa to try to capture that Black Sea port as well. And, of course, continue the push from the northwest down into Ukraine, past Kharkiv and through Kiev, and maybe out to the west of the country. You were a Marine. You were a reservist. You did 3 tours of, you were called to active duty 3 times, including a tour of duty in Afghanistan. Where do you see this going ultimately?
Well, look, it's grim. And you mentioned the armor that they're moving into these urban centers. When you have armor battles in urban centers, it's carnage. These Ukrainians are incredibly brave, but right now the situation is grim. What we can be doing beyond the sanctions is getting as many lethal weapons to the Ukrainians as possible. Stinger missiles, Javelin missile systems, anti-air artillery. That we need to continue. We got a slow start.
On that point,
yeah.
Why wasn't that all put into the country ahead of this?
Well, look, there was a lot. The administration had a very slow start with regard to getting lethal weapons to the Ukrainians, and they delayed it for a number of months. I'm not exactly sure what they were doing on that with regard to the delays. Certainly hasn't helped, but we need to continue to funnel that in there. We need to help them with intelligence, and then we're going to need to help with regard to this insurgency.
Yeah, real quick question, because the president's asking Congress for $10 billion, but there's been bipartisan negotiations on an aid package. What's taking so long?
You know, initially their supplemental, they actually did not include military dollars, and they were trying to take that out of the top line. We rejected that. I think they saw that was a ridiculous move. We need to move forward, not just on aid to the Ukrainians, but as I mentioned in that letter, our own budget, our own national security budget. You know, the president put forward a Department of Defense budget last year with significant cuts to our military. One of the things we said in the letter is, Mr. President, you can't do that again. That will only encourage Putin, Xi Jinping. When they see the President of the United States putting forward a budget to cut his own armed services, the dictators of the world smile. We need a strong military budget that includes aid to Ukraine, but to make our own military much more lethal. We hope the president puts forward something robust. He didn't do it last year. He needs to do it this year.
Ronald Reagan said it, peace through strength. Senator Sullivan, good to see you.
Good to see you, John. Thanks.